Today, we're going right back to basics to talk about why clutter holds us back and keeps us stuck. We're going to talk about some of the typical emotions that people feel and give you a fantastic solution to tackle your clutter.
You're listening to the Declutter Hub podcast, bringing you tried and tested, no-nonsense tips and advice from the leading experts in decluttering and organising your home. Now here are your hosts, Ingrid Jansen and Leslie Spellman.
Hello and welcome, listeners. I'm Ingrid.
And I'm Leslie.
If you're new to the Declutter Hub podcast, you're so welcome. What you'll find is that we try and find a fun factor in the serious business of decluttering. And if you've been here for a while, you know exactly what we mean. So thank you so much for listening.
If you'd like to get involved in conversations relating to this podcast, it all takes place in our Facebook group. So come and join our lovely, warm, supportive community. To find the Facebook group, go to declutterhub.com/group to find out more, or you can search for the Declutter Hub community on Facebook. So Ingrid, we're here to get back to basics, which is really nice actually, because we've done lots of sort of niche things over the years. We've gone in lots of different directions, but it's been a while before we've gone, right, let's get to the crux of what this decluttering situation is all about. And that's what we're going to do today. Before we get started, we had a lovely review. We have been talking about the gorgeous reviews that you all send in for us. And so we wanted to talk about one today from Susan Hyde. Ingrid.
Yes, she sent, "You never feel alone with Ingrid and Leslie to help." And she gave us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. Well, thank you, Susan. And she says, "I have enjoyed your podcast on decluttering for some time, and I love to listen and chuckle along with you both and guests. But the episode that has really helped me was the ADHD episode with Luke. My son is just starting tests for ADHD, and listening to Luke talking about this journey was insightful, reassuring, and so helpful. As someone who feels quite confident in decluttering, you still have tips and ideas that help me further. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, kindness, and decluttering expertise." How nice is that, Leslie?
I know. And thank you, Susan, for sharing your kindness to leave us a review, because that makes us feel super happy. And I'm glad that you enjoyed that podcast, and it'll give you a few hints and tips about the journey that you're about to go on with your own son. And, you know, it's interesting, actually, Ingrid, that review, because today we're going to go back to basics and talk about decluttering. Now, it comes as no secret that our kind of methodology around decluttering is very emotionally led. Okay, so we're all about kind of what is it in our world that is stopping us from making the progress that we want to make. But Susan says, of course, she's not actually got that much of a problem with clutter. She's fairly organized. She's keeping it together. But maybe sometimes things go a little bit awry, but there's still things to learn, which there absolutely are. When Ingrid and I go out for clients, there's loads of different types of client, right, Ingrid? So there are those, of course, that are completely overwhelmed with clutter. And typically those are the people that we also talk about quite a lot in these podcasts, because we are quite emotionally led. And that's where all the kind of real gold dust is, I guess, in terms of really breaking through big barriers that have been holding people back. But equally, let's not forget the people who are just like, you know what? I am quite organized, but somehow I've got this drawer that I just can't get my head around, or I've got this room that I just keep procrastinating over. So it's not like a real big problem, but it's just a little barrier that's holding someone back. So let's not forget about those people, because I think if you listen to us a lot of time, you know, we're a little bit doom and gloomy sometimes about all the kind of things that happen and the kind of emotions that hold people back. So we just wanted to pay tribute to those people who are listening each and every week and picking up little hints and tips along the way from us that will help you on your decluttering journey.
I think that's so spot on, Leslie. I mean, it just shows you. I was with a client the other day, and she's beautiful house. Everything is away, and it looks tidy and neat. But she said, I just love having you in every once in a while just to help me a little bit because I have to do all of this alone. You know, my husband works away a lot, but kids are still young. And it's so nice to have someone just to kind of go, let's do it together. Let's work together. Let's get some stuff done. So, yes, this is completely a testimonial after my own heart. And I'm so delighted to hear that we have tips and ideas for people who might not have loads of clutter as well.
Yes, definitely. But having said all that, we are going to delve back into the emotional side of things, aren't we, Ingrid? To talk about the kinds of things. And these will be on different levels. I think there's always a spectrum of all these emotions, isn't there? So we're going to talk about a few different emotions that hold you back. Some of them might be quite debilitating. Some of them might be, oh, it's a bit of a problem and I need to sort of sort it out, but it might be a reasonably easy fix to get over those things. So everything has a spectrum, right? So all of these things, even if you're kind of fairly organized, you might still feel these emotions, but perhaps you don't feel it in the same way that somebody else feels it. We've always talked about the fact that it's all about different people's level of tolerance of clutter, right, Ingrid? Yeah. And so, you know, if my house, Ingrid's house, they're fairly orderly, we keep things together, but sometimes it gets too much and we need to reset and sort it out. So it's not perfect all the time. And sometimes it feels really cluttered to us when you can sort it out within a few hours. Of course we can, but we still feel it. Does that make sense, Ingrid?
Yeah. I think, of course, people who have more clutter than other people might feel far more overwhelmed, but on the other hand, people who don't have a lot of clutter and have a little bit of clutter might feel just as overwhelmed as people who have a lot of clutter. I think it really depends on where you sit, right? It's the same with feeling guilty about something. You know, it doesn't matter how much stuff or no stuff you've got. If you feel guilty about it and it kind of eats into you, then you still feel guilty about it.
Definitely. So now you're talking about guilt, Ingrid. You've jumped into guilt. Let's talk a little bit more about guilt and let's talk about the different spectrums that might happen, because I think that's quite interesting, isn't it? So often when we're talking about guilt and we talk about somebody who really is suffering a lot with the clutter in their homes, it's about the way we feel guilty about the way our home looks and functions, right? So we feel guilty that it's not performing in the way that perhaps we feel that it ought to. And we get so much thrown at us in terms of this is the perfection, this is the goal, this is the after, this is the ideal, that it's hard to not think about things in that way, isn't it? You know what I mean? So we're going to take those in and go, oh, but I wish mine looked like that. You know, we put stuff in our Facebook group all the time and you can see people who are still going through these journeys, but people are, oh, I wish mine literally looked like the before. Do you know what I mean? So there's things like that as well, but we feel guilty about the state of our home. What else do we feel guilty about, Ingrid?
I think, Leslie, another thing that we can feel guilty about is that we come across as we don't have everything together. And that can be very hard to live up to those expectations. And I think maybe when we were raised, we were grown up in a certain way and everything had to be as it was. And now we've got our own homes and we can't juggle all those balls. And we feel like, oh, I'm just not doing justice to my house and to myself and to my family. But it's just like I'm a mess. I'm a mess all the time, and I'm frustrated about that, and I feel guilty about it because I do want to come across that I've got it all together.
Exactly. No, it's so hard, isn't it? This kind of have it all sort of scenario that we find ourselves in sometimes, particularly as women, where it's like you can have a career and you can have your kids and you can have your home and you can all of these things. You need to do all of the things, and sometimes, as you say, it just becomes really overwhelming. And of course, there are those people who are naturally good at doing that kind of thing and can hold it all together, seemingly, although I'm sure underneath the surface, if you really look, then there are elements of their lives that they're not holding together. There'll be bits of your life that you're doing better than they are and vice versa. But comparison is a tough thing, really, isn't it? We need to kind of go on our own journey, but it's hard to not compare, basically.
Yeah.
I think we also feel a lot of guilt about the money that we spend, Ingrid. I think that we feel guilty about you know, what things cost. I think we feel guilty about throwing things away that have perceived value. I think we feel guilty about throwing something away that other people have spent a lot of money on. Money is a huge thing when it comes to clutter. And these things really keep us stuck. And I think what we feel is that the money, if that money is sitting there and it's clutter, it was wasted at the time that you spent it. You're never going to get that money back. So better off to let that go to somebody else who can utilize and get that back into the, into the cycle of stuff that's going to be helpful for someone else.
I agree. And I think what we've seen as well, Leslie, especially in the last couple of years, that there's lots of guilt about the environment as well. We feel that if we throw something away, that it's going to end up in landfill, and then we feel guilty about that, so we hold on to it, but it's just a different location. So I think environmentally being more conscious about everything and trying to do your best with recycling and all of that can really hold us back trying to move forward in our homes.
I think we also, Ingrid, definitely feel guilty about the impact that our clutter or the family clutters, might not just always yours, but you feel that burden of responsibility has on relationships. And so it might be, if you have a partner, it might be that you're constantly having arguments about things. So there might be that side of it. If you've got children, you might feel guilty about the fact that you're embarrassed to have people over. They can't have sleepovers, they can't have play dates, all of those kind of things. And so I think that's a real tricky one, isn't it? We do feel it's hard. This is hard stuff, isn't it? And it's how to fix it and how to get over that guilt. And we do need to get over that guilt to be able to be positive enough to move forwards, don't we?
Yeah, definitely. But the problem is a lot of times this guilt makes us feel really overwhelmed. Doesn't it, Leslie? The overwhelm kind of stops us in our tracks. We don't know where to start. We know we want to do something, but we're like, oh, I'm just like, I don't even know. There's so much to do everywhere. And if I do something here, then by the time I get back to it, it's fallen way back again as it was, or we think that it has. And that can really give that feeling of, wow, how do people do this? How do you figure out what is the task at hand? How do you make all these decisions? Because clutter is hundreds of decisions that need to be made. Am I keeping it? Is it going? Where is it going? Is it going to recycling or in the rubbish? Or am I going to give it away? And your head's already buzzing from it all.
I think you're right. It is overwhelming. That would be the word, right? So when people approach us, email us, comment on things that we put out there, that we see face to face, overwhelm is probably the number one emotion that people are feeling. And that's because it is overwhelming. Lots of us have not been taught how to do this. Yeah, lots of us have kind of, plodded along through life and then amassing things. At the end of the day, we don't have much stuff. Typically, as a child, we kind of move out, we go away maybe for a couple of years, come back, set up home. If we were talking about a standard scenario, which is not always the case. And then all of a sudden we get into our 30s and 40s and think, where did all this stuff come from? And it's completely overwhelming. And we don't have the knowledge to be able to fix that. I think that's why it becomes so overwhelming, because you're not even sure where to start or whether you are capable of making those decisions to make a change.
Yeah. And I think as well, some people can just cope with a little bit more stuff being out, when it's visually quite busy. But some people are like, actually, I love having everything clean and the clean counters and the clean floors. And then I'm functioning much better because there's not so much visual clutter in the way all the time.
So Ingrid, we've talked about overwhelm. We have to talk about procrastination, right? Procrastination goes on hand in hand with overwhelm. Of course it does. Why do we procrastinate so much about our clutter?
Oh. Leslie, that's like the $1 million question, I think. It's like, I think maybe because we think we need to have all the answers right from the start. And we need to know exactly where we're going, what we're doing. I think we think of our clutter as a straight path from I have a clutter, I've got no clutter, and it's a straight line. Well, we know that it's not. It's a long and winding road, which you go on turns, you take a wrong, you go to a dead end, you have to come back. It's, I don't know. It's a hard one, Leslie.
Even Ingrid's overwhelmed answering the question.
I know. It's like, it is.
It's quite depressive, really, the way that you've answered that. We're supposed to be full of positivity, and you're like, I don't know. I don't even know how you would even do this. Like, how do you do that? It's just so hard all the time. But yeah, I think you procrastinate because you're so overwhelmed with things. But I think Ingrid's right and raises very valid points in there, which is the best thing that we can sort of suggest to you is that it is this long and winding road that's going to go off and veer in certain directions at certain times, whether that be time scale, when you have the appetite to do these things, when you feel at your most energetic, what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, whether you're able to come back to it a second time. That's a big thing. We talk a lot about phases in the Declutter Hub. This is your first phase, and then you're going to come back when you built up that decluttering muscle. All of those are linked to procrastination, but ultimately what you need to do is you need to do something, and you need to have a goal that sits behind that to work out what that something looks like. And I think that that's a mistake that we see a lot of people making is, as I say, to go from I want to declutter my so-and-so thing this weekend, and by the end of this weekend, I need it to look perfect. And that definitely stops people from achieving what they want and makes people think, well, that was difficult, not doing that again, and then leave it for another 6 months. So procrastination is a biggie. Obviously we've got loads of podcasts already about procrastination. So do dig those out and have a listen. And we go into it in much more detail about the specifics of procrastination.
Yes. Let's do another emotion while we're at it, Leslie.
Are you going to start crying then?
No, I was not planning to, but because what we see a lot is that people are worried. They're worried. But what if I throw it away and I might need it one day? But I've got it now. And when I bought it, I was really happy with it. And if I'm going to declutter it, then I'm worried about it, that we can't buy it again, because when I bought this, I had money to spend, and now things are tough and tight, and I've started another job, and I maybe don't make as much as I used to, and all these thoughts bust through our heads.
Worry is a big one. I think you're right there, Inga. I think one of the things, the kind of what if scenario often stems from different situations that we found ourselves in the past. And so I think that we definitely see a lot, not necessarily poverty, although poverty would come into that, times in people's lives where they've not had the same as people have had when they've been able to buy the stuff that then eventually has become clutter. And I think that people worry about that. That's a tough one. If you've had to go without at any period of your life, when you don't have to go without, you're going to probably capitalize on that a little bit. And that takes a little bit of a while to reset, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And so, the what if scenario is a big one. And there's many what ifs. What if I need it? What if I need to do this little thing? But, but again, a biggie that we wanted to talk about was really this, what if I can't afford to replace the things that I actually know are clutter and don't have those things?
Yeah. I don't know. I think also, Leslie, what we worry about as well is that we upset others, because sometimes a lot of clutter we see in people's houses are gifts from other people. But it's like, no, I can't get rid of that because so-and-so gave it to me. And I'm like, but you don't use it. You don't love it. You don't need it. It's lingering in your cupboards, taking up valuable space. Yeah, but I don't want to upset the person that gave it to me. And I think, of course, it's good to take other people's emotions into consideration. But I think the basis should be this, that you feel happy in your own home, right? Your own place is your own sanctuary. And I think that goes to the top of the list. And of course, we don't want to upset other people, but you have to put yourself first. And I think we see a lot of people who have clutter always put everybody else first, apart from themselves.
Definitely. I just wanted to say, I was just about to say that myself, actually. We see with the people that are in our world, we definitely see kindness being a big thing. People are very kind, whether that's to other people, volunteering, the environment, being kind to the environment, all of those things come into place. But what we're seeing here, Ingrid, is that the few emotions, and we did say going back to basics, so we're literally doing a whistle stop through each emotion, and trust us, it's way more complex than the things that we've said in the last sort of 15 minutes. But what we see is they're all interlinked. And so, Ingrid was talking there about we worry about things, and we worry about things because we feel guilty. We procrastinate over things because it feels overwhelming. And so all of these things are completely linked. And sometimes it's hard. You need to get down to the basics of what it is that you're feeling. And once you've got that self-awareness about what is it about this item, what is it about me that is stopping me from making what I probably know rationally is the right decision for this item, to let it go. But what is it that's stopping me from making that rational decision? And that's what this is all about. So it's never about the stuff. It's all about what sits behind the stuff and the emotions that we feel and how we feel connected to our things. the final emotion that we wanted to talk about in our little whistle-stop tour of emotional side of clutter was we wanted to talk about sentimentality. And Ingrid and I are sentimental souls, right? So we feel you, and we don't think that sentimentality should go out of the window when it comes to decluttering, far from it. But we do feel that it's all about, favoring the quality over the quantity, don't we?
I know, sprinkle a little bit of sentimentality over everything, Leslie. I mean, let's be honest, everything can be sentimental, everything that we've ever done, the first page that we drew as a child to the letters that family members that you love have sent you, photographs, your kids' little first shoe, everything can be made sentimental. But the thing is, when there's too much sentimentality and stuff around, then you can't see the wood for the trees anymore. There is too much of it, and then you can't enjoy any of it. You really have to dig down and go, but what are my favorites? And that can be quite a tricky one to do, but it will help you. And you will know when you get that warm, fuzzy feeling inside and go, oh, I'm so happy I found this. That's the thing you go, okay, that's going to be in my list of favorite things that I love, and all the other stuff around it. There can be such a thing as a good thing of too much of a good thing.
Definitely. Too much of a good thing. Yes, you're right. We see lots of too much of a good thing, right?
Yes.
So, okay. So we've gone through the basics. We've talked about the kinds of things that typically, these are like the top level emotions that we see. And then we talk a lot about sub emotions. So within each of these things, we go a little bit deeper because there are kind of basic emotions. And then there are things that are only with one kind of person. It's about your life and how that links together. And so it's all well and good, Ingrid, talking about these emotions and going, you need to be self-aware. How do we do that?
Well, how do we do that, Leslie? Well, I think what we can do is help you with this. How do you figure out these emotions and what can you do? And that's where we come in, because we are doing our Reset Your Home Challenge. We're going to start next week. We're going to do our 5-day challenge, and we're going to talk in depth about the emotions that hold us back and how you can work with that to help you forward on your decluttering journey.
I think, I already talked about the fact that it's all about self-awareness. And I think there's a couple of things within the Reset Your Home Challenge that really help you with that self-awareness. We do delve into those emotions that we've spoken about today in a really quick fire way. We talk about them in a lot more detail to see whether or not you feel that any of those emotions resonate with you. Some of them may not, but many of them typically do. And what happens within our Reset Your Home Challenge is it's the first step on your journey of self-awareness of the emotional side of clutter and how that's holding you back. And honestly, we've run the Reset Your Home Challenge a few times before, and it's very, very powerful, isn't it? In terms of getting people over the line. People come into the challenge thinking, I want to get rid of my clutter. And then after a day in the challenge, are kind of almost like, oh, right, okay, now I get that this might be different to the way that I've thought about it in the past. Because I think many people who come into our world very much think about it as all about the stuff. And we're like, kind of almost put the stuff to one side for a moment, ignore what it is actually, and let's just think about you and how you function, how you operate, how your emotions take over what we talked about a minute ago, which was kind of rational decision making. So I think self-awareness is key, and that's what we try and bring in the we do bring, because we've done it many times before, and we see the success stories as a result of that. So I think that's one part of it, and the other part of it is the practical side of the things that we do within the Reset Your Home Challenge, which kind of almost confronts you, but not in a really negative way, on a small level, with volumes. Don't we, Ingrid? So how do we do that, Ingrid?
So yes, Leslie, one of the things we do in the challenge every day is account and confess. And what that means is that we say, okay, you've got a group of items, and we would love for you to go and grab all these items together and tell us how many have you got of this certain thing. Because seeing the numbers can really open up your eyes to how many items you actually have. And we always say, think about before how many you think you have, then gather them all together and then count them up and see how many you actually have. And that's where it gets really interesting, doesn't it, Leslie? Because the people who join our challenge go, oh, I think I've got about 15. And then they go back and they come like, oh my word, I actually have got 68. How is this possible? And the count and confess is not something to go, oh, well, you have so many and kind of what were you thinking? But more like, wow, this is why you feel overwhelmed by the clutter, because you don't realize how many you have. And the counting and confessing helps you with kind of confronting yourself with the amounts in your home.
Yeah, which all leads again to that sort of self-awareness, awareness, whatever that is. That's what it's all about. It's about understanding the why that sits behind the stuff, and then you can make strides to try and change it. So yeah, we love our Reset Your Home Challenge. It's coming up in next week, I think, Ingrid. Starts on the 4th of September. All the details will be linked in the show notes here, so do check it out. You'll get much more detail in there about what rooms we're covering, what days we're doing. It's a combination of live sessions of Ingrid and I, explaining what we think about things, little mini bits of homework for you. This is not overwhelming. You're not coming into the Reset Your Home Challenge and we're thinking that you're going to be decluttering from Monday to Friday. That's not the way this works. This is more about learning. You can do the doing, and many people do some doing, but we don't want you to think that that's what you have to do. So if you're like, oh, I've got a crazy week, I can't do that, don't worry about it, because it's not essential that you actually do the doing next week. We'd rather that you do the learning, that you break through in terms of that self-awareness, do the counts and confesses to kind of confront yourself a little bit with the volumes. And so you know what you're working with typically. Yeah. And then you can start to really take it back and go, right, okay, so how am I going to then fix this?
Yeah. And I think as well, as I think the lovely thing about Reset Your Home Challenge is that we see the light bulbs going on, right? We see people going, oh, wow, I've never looked at it from that way. You've completely opened my eyes to things I hadn't even realized. And I'm getting more aware why I'm struggling with things that I didn't even understood. I just thought, okay, well, why can't I not throw this away? And the way we explain things and we talk about the emotions connected to clutter and how we break that down into the 5 days of the challenge gives people an awareness that, and they grow and learn so much in that week. And that's where I think the wins really come from.
So Ingrid, why do we think that the Reset Your Home Challenge is different or better or an alternative solution to the podcast?
I think, the podcast, we love our podcast. Everybody knows that knows we love doing the podcast. But of course, in the podcast, we talk a lot about decluttering and organizing, but we jump from one topic to the next. We talk about something different. We can't talk about the same thing all the time. We do different topics. We got guests sometimes. We try to do emotional podcast and practical podcast and 10 things podcast. So we kind of jump from one thing to the next. While in the challenge, we work together. We're there with you. We talk it through. We share, our wins together, our light bulbs together. We give lots of our learning that we share in the challenge as well. And we take you on a path of, we're now here and we're going to talk about this. And we do it in a structured way.
I think that's it. It's really all about that structure. Structure is a big one. It focuses your attention on a certain place for that day of the challenge. I think you also talked, Ingrid, about the fact that we do things together. I think there's something very powerful, empowering about working alongside other people as well. So you can share as much or as little as you want to, but there will be groups set up where you can share with other people. And I think sometimes just to even know that other people are going through similar kind of light bulb moments and emotions and sharing is very freeing and, helps you to go to that next stage. So I'm excited. It's a while since we've done it. It's an interesting one because Ingrid and I, we do different challenges throughout the year, but the Reset Your Home Challenge, honestly, is the most powerful challenge that we do by a mile. And that's why we tweak it a little bit. We change it a little bit. So there's some fresh content within there, but we keep on bringing it back because we know that that's a lot of times the real starting point on people's decluttering journey.
Yeah. And you know what? We've all had the summer. Now it's time to kind of get back to look at that second half of the year. Right. kids are back to school. I'm back in my job. Volunteering is all starting back up again, isn't it? Around September time. So we would love you to go, right, how am I envisioning myself between now and the end of the year? What can I do? If clutter and decluttering is your main focus, this is the perfect challenge for you to get involved in. This is the perfect challenge for you to go, actually, you know what? I'm ready for this now. I want it to break down. I want to hang out with Ingrid and Leslie for the week. I want to do learning. I want to feel motivated and supported. And that's exactly what we're going to give you.
Exciting. We love a Reset Your Home challenge, don't we?
I do. And because we get to hang out with lots of people and we can talk about clutter and all the things that we can do to help. So, I mean, what's better than that, Leslie?
Exactly.
So come and join us for our challenge. We would love to see you there. You can sign up on declutterhub.com/RYH. You can also find the link in the show notes. We would love to see you there. And yeah, have a great week, everyone. Thanks for listening.
Thanks so much for listening to the Declutter Hub podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to us in your podcast player so you don't miss an episode, and we'll see you next week.